Hey, what is up everybody? My name is Brienne, you can also call me Owlco, and today in this video I'm going to try to go over a few tips to maybe help persuade your parents or your guardian into you getting a reptile or a pet. This video is a little bit of a fun video for me. I didn't really prepare for it. I did have a viewer who asked me to make this video for them. I'm sorry if it might disappoint you because there are a few main factors that decide whether or not you get a pet, and there are many other factors that might also influence the main factors of you actually being able to get a pet or a reptile and having to get permission from your parents. So when it all comes down to it, the two things that come to mind is when someone is looking to get a new pet reptile is money and maturity. Now, if you don't have either, it's going to be a very, very hard time persuading your parents or your guardian for you to get that reptile or pet. So the reason why I say is money is because your parents, for one, probably do not want to spend a whole lot of money on a reptile cage, reptile food, stuff that goes into the reptile cage, because they can get really expensive. So I always recommend for maybe someone to save up money, save their allowance, get a job if you're old enough to get a job, and then you can gather all the stuff you need prior for you getting that animal or reptile, and then that way you can kind of show your parents or your guardian that you are ready for this animal, that you have everything that you need for this animal, and that your parents aren't going to have to spend extra money for you in order to keep this animal. Another thing too, this is the having money part also kind of ties into being mature, because your parent or guardian does not want you to get an animal or a reptile and then neglect it. So a lot of times younger kids will, or I guess the younger generation will get an animal, get bored with it, leave it, then the animal actually suffers, where then the parent does have to go and try to sell this animal. And ideally, I'm not promoting that. I don't want anybody to promote any neglect for animals, but the sad reality is that this happens. So if you are not mature enough to care for your reptile or a pet in the longevity of its life, then you probably should not get one. Okay, so now that I talked about money and maturity, let's talk about all the other factors that may influence you into getting an animal. Now, it all kind of comes down to your parents' beliefs, their values, and how they run their household. So a lot of parents, they don't like creepy crawly things or reptiles with scales on it, crickets for one, because that's one of the main staple diet that reptiles do eat, and maybe they just don't have the proper money to actually support your reptile hobby. All these factors kind of come down to you getting a pet, and they can change from household to household. Now, if you come from a wealthier household where your parents don't really care too much and they love to give you money, then maybe it's a little bit easier for you to get a reptile. But then some other families that maybe they don't want to spend their money on your hobby, you do have to respect your parents' rules in the house. So unfortunately, if you are watching this video and you are part of the younger generation and you are fully not mature enough to get a reptile, then I'm sorry, you're probably gonna have to wait a few years before you can actually live out your dream. And this is why I think this video might be a little bit disappointing, because if I do have some of those younger viewers, it's not that easy to persuade parents. Now, with me, when I first got my first reptile, I think, how old was I? Like, I gotta count, I can't even do math. So I was actually 22 years old when I first got Carlo in 2017, and I had a decent enough job where I came home with decent amounts of money. So I was able to buy my own cage, everything inside it, as well as the reptile itself. And for me, being the age that I was, I found that it was easier to get the reptile secretly and then ask for forgiveness later. I don't recommend this because it probably will not work for most people, especially if your maturity level is not where it's supposed to be to actually care for that reptile. One of my biggest tips that I can give to you if you do really want to get a reptile or a small pet is to do your research. Show your parents or your guardian that you can do your research, you know how to properly care for this animal, and save up enough money so that your parents don't have to take a substantial amount of money out of their pocket to help you get this. Because it all comes down to, in the reptile hobby, is that if you don't have enough money to care for an animal, you probably should not keep it. Reptiles especially can get really expensive, especially chameleons. Whereas some of the smaller reptiles, they don't cost as much, but you're still looking to spend a few $100s to set up their entire cage and to continuously buying food for them throughout their whole life. So really it all comes down to if you have enough money, how old or how mature you are, your parents' rules in their household, and how well you can probably do your research. Because for me, I showed my parents that I was well enough, I researched enough so that I can take care of my chameleon, and eventually they kind of were okay with me having a chameleon. And now I moved out and I got 2 other reptiles, so I can do whatever I want. I can get whatever pet I want. However, I won't, because I don't like to have a large caseload on my back. Anyways, I hope this video kind of helped you out and kind of gave you some ideas to maybe some ways for you to persuade your guardian or parent for getting a reptile or a small pet. I know this video is probably not what some people were hoping it to be, but I just really wanted to put out my opinion on what I think in ways you can persuade your parent or guardian, and the reasons why you probably should not get a reptile if you don't meet some of the main requirements. Please don't be mad at me. I know the truth hurts sometimes, but if you do agree to me, please give me a thumbs up. If you do have any cool stories that you'd like to share with me, put them in the comment section below about you getting your first reptile or how you persuaded your parents into getting your first reptile or a pet. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel, give it some love, make sure to hit that notification button so that when I do make any new videos, you are notified and you can watch them right away.